back for Wolf Brother Chapter 19 Part 2. Torak has entered into the cave and the author uses his other senses to tell us what is going on in there. So not just what he can see, but what he can hear and what he can smell, what he can feel. He groped for the wall. It felt slimy, like dead flesh. He shuffled forward, feeling the way with his feet. The rushlight trembled and shrank to a glimmer. The stench wafted up from the darkness, stinging his nostrils. After several halting steps, he came up against stone. The cave mouth had narrowed to a gullet. He'd have to turn sideways to get through. Shutting his eyes, he edged in. It felt as if he were being swallowed. He couldn't breathe. He kept thinking of the weight of the rock face pressing in on him. The air cooled. He was still in a tunnel, but it was wider and twisted sharply to the right. Glancing back, he saw that the daylight had vanished, and with it Wren and Wolf. The stink got stronger as he followed the tunnel, hearing nothing but his own breathing, seeing nothing but glimpses of glistening red stone. A sudden chill to his left, and he nearly lost his footing. Pebbles rattled, then dropped into silence. The left-hand wall had vanished. He was standing on a narrow ledge, jutting out over darkness. From far below came an echoing blink of water. One slip and he'd be over the edge. Another bend, this time to the left, and a rock beneath his foot tilted. With a cry, he grabbed for a handhold, righting himself just in time. At the sound of his cry, something stirred. He froze. "Torak!" Wren's voice sounded far away. He didn't dare call out. Whatever had moved had gone still again, but it was a horrible, waiting stillness. It knew he was there. "The Watchers everywhere. They see you, but you don't see them. Not till it's too late." He forced himself to go on. Down. Always down. The stink came at him in waves. "Breathe through your mouth," said a voice in his head. That was what he and Far used to do when they came upon a stinking kill site or a bat-infested cave. He tried it, and the stench became bearable, although it still caught at his eyes and throat. Abruptly, the ground levelled out, and he felt space opening up around him. A dim light had to be coming from somewhere, because he made out a vast, shadowy cavern. The fumes were almost overwhelming. He was in the dripping, reeking bowels of the earth. The ledge he was standing on ended, and the floor beyond it was weirdly humped. In the middle of the cavern, a great flat-topped stone gleamed like black ice. It looked as if it had stood untouched for thousands of winters. Even from 20 paces away, Torak could feel its power. This was where the walker had found his stone claw. This was the reason for the warning hand at the cave mouth. This was what the Watchers guarded, a door to the underworld. Torak couldn't take another step. It was like the times when he awoke so heavy with sleep that to stir even a finger seemed impossible. To steady himself, he put his free hand on the hilt of his knife. The sinew binding felt faintly warm, giving him the courage to step down onto the cave floor. As he did, he cried out in disgust. Ugh! The floor sank beneath his boot, a noisome softness sucking him down. The killing earth that gulps and swallows. His cry rang round the walls, and far above him he heard a stealthy movement. Something dark detached itself from the roof and swooped towards him. There was nowhere to hide, nowhere to run. The softness sucked at his boots like wet sand. A fetid downrush, and the thing was on him, greasy fur clogging his mouth and nose, sharp claws tearing at his hair. Snarling with horror, he beat at the silent attacker. At last it lifted away with a leathery thwap, but he knew that it wasn't vanquished. The watcher had merely come to find out what he was. Once it knew, it had left. But what was it? A bat? A demon? How many more were there? Torak floundered on. Halfway to the stone, he stumbled and fell. The stink was unbearable. He wallowed in choking blackness. He couldn't see, couldn't think. Even the rushlight turned black, a black flame flaring above him. He staggered to his feet, shaking himself free like a swimmer gasping for air. His mind steadied. The black flame burned yellow again. He reached the stone. On its ancient smoothness, 6 stone claws had been arranged in a spiral, with a gap where the walker had snatched the 7th. At the centre lay a single black stone tooth. Oldest of all, the stone bite, the second part of the Nanook. Sweat slid down his spine. He wondered what power he would unleash if he touched it. He stretched out his hand, then snatched it back, remembering Wren's warning. Don't touch the Nanook with your bare hands. Where was the mitten? He must have dropped it. With the rushlight he cast around, plunging his hand into the stinking mounds. Again the dizziness mounted. Again the flame darkened. Just in time, he found the mitten tied to his belt. Yanking it on, he reached for the tooth. The rushlight glimmered on the cave wall behind the stone and lit the gleam of thousands of eyes. With his hand poised above the tooth, he moved the flame slowly to and fro. It caught the liquid gleam of eyes. The walls were swarming with watchers. Wherever the light touched, they rippled and heaved like a maggot-riddled carcass. If he took the tooth, they would come for him. Suddenly, everything happened at once. From far above came Wolf's sharp, urgent bark. Wren screamed, "Torak, it's coming!" The watchers exploded around him. The rushlight went out. Something struck him in the back and he fell forward onto the stone. Again Wren screamed, "Torak! The bear!" Ah! Let's find out what happens in chapter 20.